to talk to you today about a food system that I have created to ensure that I never miss a meal again, mostly. What this food hack solves is the feeling of, oh, I'm so hungry, but that sounds like so much work, so I'm not gonna do anything at all. Or the very common, I just don't have the energy to decide what to eat, so not eating is better. Or eating a string cheese and a single grape. Newsflash, that's not a meal. This food system came to me when I was at my lowest of lows. I wasn't eating unless I ordered food. I was extremely depressed, super burnt out, and food became my lowest priority. But what would happen is by the time the evening rolled around, I was so incredibly nauseous that I felt as though I had to consume the devil's lettuce to even get anything in my body. But because I was doing that, it would result in me binge eating, and I would actually over consume in the evenings, which would make me feel incredibly sick, bad about myself, but the cycle continued over and over again. I felt shitty, I felt lost, and I felt like there was no easy way to fix this. Until I sat down and I did a journaling session to reflect as to why I wasn't eating. And here's what I came up with. 1, I didn't feel I had the energy to cook a meal. And 2, I was paralyzed by the decision fatigue deciding what to eat causes. So I needed to create a system that would directly solve these 2 problems. And what I noticed was that even at my lowest of lows, out of nowhere, I would have a burst of energy and maybe feel as though I could put that energy into food. So what I called that was tier 1. The top of a pyramid, tier number 1, this is the days when I have motivation and energy to cook a meal. And 2, I would have groceries that are relatively fresh, between 1 to 4 days old. And 3, I would have enough time to cook something like this, between 15 minutes to an hour. When I was in my deep lows, this did not come often. In fact, it maybe came once a month, but I recognized that the difference was not necessarily how I was feeling about myself, but how much energy I had that day. So this, my friends, is tier number 1 of a 3-tier food system. So if you're not in a tier 1 state, if you don't feel like that's even attainable at the moment, that is totally okay. I like to tell people that tier 1 tends to happen on like a weekend when you feel that you have more energy or more time, and you might even have the ability to muster the courage to go to the grocery store to get fresh food for your meals. Or if you're like me, you can maybe pre-plan in advance to have your groceries delivered to your house. It's like an extra $4.50 for me to get my groceries delivered. Gas would cost me that much, so why wouldn't I? So I get my groceries delivered. So now we understand what tier 1 is. We want to take out the decision paralysis that comes with making food. So I realized that I needed to, under every tier, create a menu of foods that fit in that singular tier. So when I feel as though I have lots of energy, like in a tier 1 day, I can just look at my menu, pick one of those, and do it. The reason this is so helpful is it takes away that decision fatigue and doesn't feel like you're starting from scratch. All you need to do is point, pick, move forward. What foods fall into this tier? Well, here are some examples for myself. Pasta with a cooked meat of some sort. Brussels sprouts, chicken, and a salad type dish. Chili with multiple ingredients. They would take more than 15 minutes to make and would require some fresh ingredients that you would have needed to pre-plan in advance to make that dish. That is why this tier can feel so unattainable for so many ADHDers. When we're in a state of burnout, or maybe we're depressed, it can feel impossible to pre-plan in advance because we're stuck in a state of survival. And if you have ADHD, pre-planning in advance is just hard to do. So while tier 1 exists, it might not be your go-to tier right now, and that is okay. I used to feel so guilty when I wasn't able to cook meals for myself. But the reason this tier system worked so well for me was because it made it very obvious and clear that there's not only one tier. There is not only one way to consume food. So as I continued to reflect on my journey of building out this tier system, I realized there had to be a tier below it that was more attainable, more realistic, maybe suited to an average day. Now, when I was at my lowest of lows, my average day consisted of not eating. And so I wanted this tier, tier number 2, to reflect the average day I was working towards. So in tier number 2, you can expect 1, an average level of motivation to cook a meal, 2, groceries that are between 1 to 2 weeks old, and 3, enough time to make something between 5 to 15 minutes. So when I'm saying average, we're talking about the space that exists between your maximum motivation and your minimum motivation. Not necessarily how you show up on a day-to-day basis, but something that exists between the two. So some of the foods that could fall into this tier could be peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, mac and cheese with beans, ramen with a cooked egg on top. Notice that these foods all fall under a similar grocery list. They don't need to be super fresh to exist in your fridge or in your pantry. Also, mac and cheese with beans is underrated and you should try it. It's good. So out of curiosity, I want you to DM me over on Instagram and tell me, what is a tier 2 food that you think I should try? I feel like everyone has one in their back pocket. So tell me, because I'm open for suggestions. A favorite of mine is just cutting up some cucumber slices and having dip on the side of some of these meals as well. But remember, our focus right now is not to eat perfectly, it's to eat. It's better to eat than not eat. Now, when I was in my lowest of low and creating this tier list, I was also not in a tier 2 state. I wasn't making those types of foods either, which led me to believe that there had to be another tier, tier number 3. The final tier needed to be so achievable that it almost felt silly not to eat because I had these options in front of me. I started considering, what foods will I always grab for if I have access to them? 1, delivery of some sort. 2, leftovers from a previous meal, or 3, microwavable favorites. When these foods were available to me, I had no problem eating because it felt so easy. When I was depressed and lying on the couch, I knew that I could walk to the kitchen, throw something in the microwave, go to the bathroom, and by the time I was done, my microwavable meal would be ready for me, and so I would do it. Similarly with delivery, I knew that I could have a delicious full meal, but the guilt that came with delivery and the cost that came with delivery made this a really hard option for me to continue to pick, and I wanted to stop choosing it. But here's what I realized about tier 3. When we're in this tier, we have 1, little to no motivation or ability to cook food. 2, groceries that last between 2 to 4 weeks or longer. And 3, less than 5 minutes to prepare it. All of these requirements for a tier 3 meal are set at our lowest possible ability to function. We want to plan for our worst days so that when they show up, we're not shocked, we're instead prepared. Examples of foods that could fall under this tier could be 1, frozen burritos, 2, frozen pizzas, 3, oven-ready dinners. If you can throw something in the oven for 20 minutes, walk away, great. But that might still be too high of a threshold for you to eat. That's why a quick microwavable meal might be the better option. Having a freezer packed with healthy microwavable meal options and having your fridge maybe stored with like shakes, I have those and they're delicious and so easy to grab when I feel nauseous especially, makes it so that it feels so simple to eat that it feels silly not to. Again, I'm preparing for the worst kind of day and I'm accommodating myself in advance and giving myself the lowest possible barrier of entry to eat. I'm super excited that I live between a tier 1 and a tier 2 state now, depending on the day.
But I will forever and always
have my favorite microwavable burritos available to me in my freezer so that I'm not shocked when the day comes that I'm struggling a little bit more than usual, because I can then still fuel myself with a food that I think is delicious and is very easy to make. So if you've watched this whole video, here's what I hope you get out of it. Creating a menu for every tier that exists, putting that menu somewhere in your house or in your kitchen so that when the hunger cues arrive, you're able to walk up to the list, pick something very easily, and do that. Taking away the decision fatigue that might come with food in general, and instead feeling as though you're accommodating yourself in advance to when you're going to struggle. And that's the 3-tier food system that genuinely saved my life as I was going through one of the hardest times of my life. I would be so curious to hear, What falls in every single menu for you? You let me know maybe? I want to hear.
What's up? What's up?